Japan had 333 ships. Korea had 13. The battle lasted less than a day. Japan didn't break through. The man commanding those 13 ships had been released from prison 2 days earlier. Before that, he had been tortured. Before the torture, he had been Korea's greatest naval commander. The man who had cut Japan's supply line at Hansan Island 5 years earlier fought 23 battles and won every single one. His own king had stripped him of his rank, reduced him to common soldier, and handed his fleet to someone else. That someone else lost 157 ships in a single afternoon. Then the king gave Yi Sun-sin his 13 remaining ships and told him to do something. He did something. This is the story of Yi Sun-sin. The admiral who was arrested by the country he was defending, handed a fleet that couldn't fight a harbor patrol, and won anyway. Twice. In the spring of 1592, Toyotomi Hideyoshi launched the largest overseas military invasion Asia had ever seen. If you watched episode 65 on Oda Nobunaga, you know this army. Nobunaga spent his career building a modern war machine. Disciplined infantry, Portuguese firearms, coordinated logistics. He was assassinated before he could use it for conquest. Hideyoshi inherited the machine and aimed it at the Asian continent. His stated goal was to conquer Ming China. Korea was in the way. 158 to 800 Japanese soldiers crossed the Korea Strait in April 1592. Korean land forces, unprepared and outgunned by Japanese arquebusiers, collapsed. Busan fell in 1 day. The capital, Hanyang, modern Seoul, fell in 18 days. The king fled north. Within months, Japan controlled most of the Korean peninsula. The land war was over almost before it began. But the sea was a different question entirely. The Japanese war plan depended on the sea. Hideyoshi's army was on the peninsula, but it needed food, reinforcements, and ammunition flowing from Japan. The supply line ran along Korea's southern and western coasts. If that line broke, the entire invasion stalled. Standing between Hideyoshi's fleet and that supply line was one Korean naval commander who had spent the previous year quietly building something Japan had never encountered before. Yi Sun-sin had been appointed as naval commander of Korea's left Jeolla province in 1591, exactly 1 year before the invasion. He was not a senior official. He was not court nobility. He had spent his career on the northern frontier fighting Jurchen raiders. His appointment to the south was considered a minor posting. He used the year well. Yi oversaw the construction of the turtle ship, the Geobuksion. It was not, as later legend sometimes claims, a fully armored ironclad. It was a covered warship, a penoxion hull with a reinforced iron-plated roof studded with iron spikes, a dragon-head prow that could discharge smoke or cannon fire, and multiple gun ports on all sides. The key feature was the roof. Japanese naval tactics in 1592 depended on boarding, grappling an enemy ship, swarming it with swordsmen, and taking it by hand-to-hand combat. The turtle ship's spiked roof made boarding impossible. Its cannon could fire in every direction without exposing the crew. It was the first warship specifically designed to counter Japan's offensive doctrine. Yi's first engagement came on May 7th, 1592, 16 days after the invasion began. At the Battle of Okpo, his fleet encountered Japanese warships at anchor. Japan lost 42 ships. Korea lost none. He fought 2 more engagements that week. Same result. So then came Hansan Island. On August 14, 1592, Yi engaged the main Japanese fleet off the coast of Hansan Island. He had 56 warships. Japan had 73. Yi lured the Japanese fleet out of the narrow coastal waters, where their boarding tactics might still work, into open water. When Japan's fleet followed, Yi deployed his signature formation, the crane wing, Hakik-jin. His ships fanned out in a curved arc, surrounding the Japanese fleet on 3 sides, and opened fire simultaneously from multiple angles. It was the first time a Korean formation had deliberately encircled a Japanese fleet in open water. Japan lost 59 ships. Korea lost 0 ships and 19 men. After Hansan Island, Japan never again attempted to control the Yellow Sea. Hideyoshi's supply line along the western coast was cut. The advance to Pyongyang stalled. The invasion, which had swept across the peninsula in weeks, ran into a wall it couldn't get past. Yi Sun-sin had not stopped the invasion. He had guaranteed that Japan could not win it. Korea's land forces, reinforced by the Ming dynasty, eventually pushed Japan back to the southern coast. A ceasefire held from 1593 to 1597. During those years, Yi Sun-sin commanded Korea's naval forces, maintaining the supply cut off and preparing for the inevitable second invasion. Japan was also preparing, and Japan had learned something during the First War. They couldn't beat Yi Sun-sin on the water, so they decided to remove him from it. In 1527, Japanese intelligence fed false information to the Joseon court. A Japanese general was planning to move by a specific route at a specific time. If Korean naval forces struck now, they could intercept him. The information was fabricated. The route led into waters Japan had specifically prepared to ambush any fleet that entered. Yi Sun-sin refused the order. He had spent 15 years studying these straits and coasts. He knew the intelligence was wrong. He said so. The court charged him with insubordination, cowardice, and deliberately allowing the enemy to escape. He was arrested, transported to Seoul, and tortured. Only the personal intervention of several senior officials, who argued correctly that executing Yi Sun-sin would be a catastrophic military error, saved his life. He was stripped of all rank, reduced to common soldier. His fleet of 169 warships was handed to an admiral named Won-gyun. In August 1597, Won-gyun led Korea's fleet into exactly the ambush Yi had refused to enter. At the Battle of Chilchon-ryang, Japan destroyed 157 of Korea's 159 warships in a single day. Won-gyun died in the water. Korea's naval capacity, built over 6 years, was gone in an afternoon. Japan's fleet now moved freely along Korea's coast. The supply line reopened. The second invasions accelerated. The king had one option left. He reinstated Yi Sun-sin as supreme naval commander. Yi Sun-sin had 12 warships left. He later found one more. The Myeongyang Strait is a narrow channel between the Korean peninsula and a small island off the southern coast. It is roughly 300 meters wide at its tightest point. The water moves at extraordinary speed. More importantly, the current reverses direction twice a day, flowing one way for 6 hours, then reversing completely. Yi Sun-sin chose this strait deliberately. On October 26, 1597, Japan's fleet entered the Myeongyang Strait with 133 combat ships and 200 support vessels. Yi had 13. Yi positioned his fleet at the narrowing point of the strait, where Japan's numerical advantage was physically impossible to deploy. You cannot bring 133 ships to bear simultaneously in a channel 300 meters wide. Japan's ships entered in sequence. Yi's fleet met them head-on. When the current shifted, reversing against Japan's advancing ships, Yi ordered his fleet forward. Japan's ships, fighting both Korean cannon and the reversing current, began colliding with each other. The Japanese flagship was destroyed. Its admiral, Kurushima Michifusa, was killed. His body was retrieved from the water and displayed, a visible, deliberate signal to both fleets. Japan lost 31 ships. They could not break through the strait. Yi Sun-sin had just stopped the second Japanese naval advance with 13 ships against 333. He filed his after-action report that night. The final line read, "It is said that those who seek death will live, and those who seek life will die. One man standing in the right place can be enough." He wasn't wrong about the numbers. He was never wrong about the numbers. Toyotomi Hideyoshi died in September 1598. With the architect of the invasion gone, Japan's commanders in Korea began negotiating withdrawal. By November, most of Japan's forces were boarding ships and leaving. Yi Sun-sin was not going to let them leave clean. On November 19th, 1598, Yi commanded a joint Korean-Ming fleet of 150 ships, intercepting the retreating Japanese fleet at Noryang Strait, the same waters where so much of the war had been fought. The battle began at midnight and continued through the dawn. Japan was retreating, but Yi was not letting them go unopposed. Japanese ships going home would be Japanese soldiers and commanders available for a third invasion. Somewhere in the early morning, accounts say approximately 7 a.m., a musket ball struck Yi Sun-sin. He was on deck, directing the battle at its height. His nephew caught him. Yi's recorded last words, spoken before he lost consciousness. "The battle is at its height. Do not announce my death." His nephew and a small group of attendants covered his body and continued fighting, relaying his orders as though he still lived for the rest of the battle. Japan lost over 200 ships at Noryang. The retreating fleet was devastated. The Imjin War was over. Yi Sun-sin was carried off the ships dead. He had fought 23 battles in his naval career. He had won all 23. He had never lost a ship under his direct command, except when his own government took his fleet away. He was given the posthumous title Chungmugong, Duke of Loyalty and Valor. His statue stands today in Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul, at the head of the boulevard leading to the old royal palace. The country he spent his life defending erected a statue of the man they once arrested for defending it. History does not always sort itself out. Sometimes it does.